I think everybody's got one or two of these movies that are like your first ever grown-up movies that deal with real themes and important stuff. And maybe they strike you at just the right point at that formative age. And you're like, man, that movie is always going to hold a special place in my heart. And I think the first movie I ever saw that did that was the Edward Zwick film, Glory, about the 54th Massachusetts. I think it was the 54th Massachusetts. The runaway slave regiment that went back and fought with the North against the South in the Civil War. And the other movie that holds that place for me is Braveheart. And it resonated with me on a ton of different levels that we don't have time to get into. But for me, the character I resonated with there was not Mel Gibson's William Wallace covered in blood wearing the kilt. It was Angus McFadden's Robert the Bruce. Robert the Bruce the whole time is the point of view character. I mean, really, he's you. Nobody is William Wallace. Nobody goes out and just wades into the fray and throws caution to the wind and does what is right and principled as they see it, no matter what. No, everybody's Angus McFadden's Robert the Bruce. All of us are on the sidelines imagining people like that and wanting to follow them and wanting to get into the fray and wanting to believe, but cynicism and obligation and all of these other things crowd your mind. And so there's this great scene toward the end of Braveheart where the King of Scotland, this decrepit old man with leprosy and everything, who's been pulling the strings behind the scenes, finally sells out William Wallace, and Robert the Bruce finds out, and he goes charging into his dad, and he's like, what the heck? What are you doing? And the crusty old dad is like, well, this is what it is to be a leader. Someday you'll understand. All men become cynical. All men lose hope. And then Robert the Bruce is like, I don't want to become cynical. I want to believe as he does. And I just butchered that quote, but it's something like that. And in that moment, you see Robert the Bruce finally commit to say, I know what is true and real, and I'm going to chase that down, even at great risk to myself. It's what Robert the Bruce was looking for, and I think it's what the people in the boat were looking for in Matthew chapter 14. They have been hoping that Jesus is actually who he just intoned that he is. I am God, that he's the Messiah, the Christ, but it's almost blasphemous in their minds, and it should be almost blasphemous in their minds to even think of ascribing such a thing to him, to even think of saying that. I mean, if you're wrong and you say somebody is God who isn't God in this culture or really in any culture, that's pretty screwed up. That's a pretty big whiff that could have some pretty meaningful consequences. So here we are in Matthew 14. The disciples who know the Sea of Galilee, as well as anybody has ever known it, are in a tough spot. If they're worried, you got a problem. They are worried. And here comes Jesus looking to them like, I think the literal Greek word here is as a phantasm. He looks like a ghost, a specter, and they don't know what to make of it, and they're freaking out all the more. And he comforts them by using this I am language. And in this moment, with all this chaos and other stuff going on, Peter is the one who hears that. And this storm, I think, is calmed in his brain when he hears those words, when he sees who it is, and he takes courage, and in that moment, he sees that Jesus is out in the fray. That's him. I know him. He's willing to go to places that other people aren't willing to go. And Peter, in one of the wildest human moments in the entire Bible, is like, the thing that would make the most sense for me to do, given what I just saw here, and given what I know about that guy walking on the thrashing surface of the Sea of Galilee during a storm, the thing that makes the most sense for me to do right now is to get out of this boat with him. I want to fight as he does. So again, Matthew 14:27, but Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. And then Peter says, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come out to you on the water. And then Jesus says, come. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. What in the world? Again, Matthew with this incredibly casual, matter-of-fact language. It was a storm. Jesus walked on the water and came toward us, and we freaked out. And then Peter was like, hey, if it's you, just tell me to walk on the water with you, and I will. And Jesus is like, okay, do that. And then Peter gets out of the boat, and he just does that, and that's what happened. The contrast between what is being described and the manner in which it is being described is mind-boggling to me. It's almost indicative of like somebody you know who just rubs elbows with all kinds of fancy people, and they're not a name dropper and they're not proud of it, but they just describe their life like you describe your life to them. And they're like, yeah, this and this. And I was talking with, who was it the other day? It was this person. And you're like, oh my goodness, you're being so casual. This is like everybody else's dream life. I'd be hyperventilating if I had that afternoon. But to that person, it's like, well, I don't know. It's just a normal day. This is just how the things are. And so when this is how the things are, you just talk about it like anyone would talk about how the normal things are in their days. Matthew apparently has seen so much stuff like this. He's like, yeah, this is just exactly what went down. Whatever the case, to me, this is Peter's Robert the Bruce moment. He's saying, all right, I've seen enough. We're at the halfway point of the book of Matthew. John the Baptist and his disciples, they wavered a little bit. Jesus' family, they should know, but nobody really wants to say what is maybe going on. Maybe we need to protect Jesus from himself. I don't know. Do you go all in with this thing? Because if you do and you were wrong, it's going to be calamitous. But if you go all in with Jesus on this thing and it turns out it was true, and the implications are huge, they're endless as well. And it seems like everybody is paralyzed up to this point. They don't know quite how to respond. And now we get to a point where, again, Peter has seen enough to be like, no, I'm making a decision. I am casting my lot in with Jesus. And maybe Peter here has those two little micro parables from the last chapter that were spoken directly to the disciples in chapter 13, the parable about the hidden treasure and the pearl of great price. Maybe those are still ringing in Peter's ears. And he's like, yeah, those guys, they saw the thing that was of greatest value and they bailed on everything else. They directed their focus directly at that. They didn't care what kind of risk that involved. They were going to follow this thing that was of the greatest value, the truest, realest thing. And then Jesus looked at us, Peter's thinking to himself, and he was like, y'all understand this? And we were like, yeah, we understand. And Jesus seemed to affirm that Peter and the others understood there at the end of the Kingdom Parables discourse. And now it looks like, well, maybe Peter kind of did. At least in the moment, he did. And so Peter does something that is not just bold, is not just a willingness to get in the fray, but it is a public, physical, you can't go back from that gesture of commitment. If he takes one step out of the boat and then the phantasm disappears and he just sinks and almost drowns, oh, he looks like such an idiot. Forever, people are going to be like, hey, Peter, remember when you got taken in by all of our weird hallucinations about the homeless guy who said that he could be like the king of everything and change the world? Remember, it got so far that you were willing to walk out of a boat into a storm on the lake and we had to save you and we pulled you in like a drowned rat? Well, guess what? We're not going to let you forget that because you're the idiot who took it too far. The stakes are very high by taking such a public stance. And he does it. And incredibly, that faith, that response, that willingness to be the first to literally as well as figuratively step out and be like, all right, I think you are who you say you are. I think you are, I am. It's rewarded because for just a minute, he walks as Jesus walks on the water. And we'll talk about him sinking and what happened after that next time around. But in a lot of ways, what I see here is Peter's actual confession of Christ. We're going to get to that very famous passage here in a couple of pages where Jesus is like, all right, yeah, but who do you guys say that I am? And Peter's the one who, again, steps out of the boat, entirely metaphorically now, and is like, you're the Christ, the Messiah, you're the Son of God. He gets it verbally in that moment, but really the point where he committed to that truth in his mind, in his heart, with his reputation, is this moment under duress, under pressure, in front of all of his peers, on the lake, with his very life at stake. On the one hand, I'm blown away by this moment because it's such an incredible gesture of faith, such an incredible invitation from Jesus. Like, yeah, come join me with this thing. But on the other hand, I also feel that Robert the Bruce envy for that degree of clarity. I'm in. I'm a Christian. I think there's a God behind this document. I think Jesus is the Son of God. Like, there's my disclosure. You know, if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm turning over my hand here. But at the same time, I don't know that I'm that in. I don't know that I have that much clarity. I have this skeptic brain, and I'm always wrestling with it, and grappling with the text, and grappling with reason and evidence, and all of this other stuff. and I want to fight as he does. I want to be in the fray. But look at what in the fray meant in this moment. There's a whole lot of levels of metaphor about courage and commitment and to clarity and all of that stuff, and we need to unpack it more as we go along. I find this passage to be very inspiring, very challenging, and also very narratively important, as this effectively, once again, is Peter's confession of Christ. He just is going to put words to it here in a couple of pages. I had fun gaming this one out with you. Thanks for enduring my history of rated R movies as a young person at the beginning. Y'all are cool to indulge me so much on the personal storytelling side of things here. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. We got more to process through on this very important, pivotal scene, and we'll do so tomorrow. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.